Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Wireheads. It is episode 10. We are in the double digits now, which is insane. I remember pitching this idea to Diamond like 2.5 months ago and like being told, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And I don't know, to quote Plankton, I didn't think I'd get this far. That's pretty much where we are right now. But tonight we are talking about, so this is part 2. So if you wanted to see what we were talking about in part 1, we talked about why Diamond and I love the fact this game has some extremely miserable themes to it and like why we think that's a good thing actually. So if you want to hear a little more about that, I know we have at least one question around it already for a Q&A section at the end of this video. So if you want to go and check that out and get the context for it, that's going to be over on Diamond's channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be linked down below. Of course, if you're listening to this elsewhere, or if you're here with us live Wednesday night on Twitch at 8:30 p.m. Pacific, just saying, those of you who aren't here now should be. But if you've been here this whole time, one way or the other, you'll already have all the context. So that's all good. You're going to have a much easier time than those on YouTube who are starting here. So tonight, my subject is a little different. It's kind of a continuation of something that we were discussing last week. So last week, just a quick refresher, we talked about the Cyberpunk Edgerunners mission kit and what we know about it so far. And I don't believe we've gotten any new information on that front this last week that we need to like add to that pile. I think for the most part, we've more or less kind of like got what we've got for the moment. The one thing though that I will mention in the future, near future, we are going to be having another little interview with Jay Gray. So those of you up front here who do want to discuss something or ask a question of him, we would love to hear those questions and present them to him as long as we were able to, or at least present the spirit of them if it's not precisely the question. Because again, there's an art form to asking Jay Gray questions. He's very clever about not responding if he doesn't have a good way of answering it without spoiling something or leaking something or whatever. He's very good at not doing that. So like we might reword a question just to get the spirit of it, so he doesn't give us a non-answer. I will say that up front. However, if you want to send us those questions, you can put them in the comments below this video, or if you're listening to this on Spotify, or, you know, obviously you can put it in our chat, because we have, we're trying to get it for next Friday, but we haven't gotten a confirmation yet on whether we can get that or not. However, we're working on it. So, if you want to put it in the comments below this video or next week's Wireheads, or email us at wireheadspod@googlegroups.com. I have, for those of you who've done that before, you got a mail Damon that said, we can't deliver this. I fixed it. So it'll work now. You can send us email there, and I promise you it won't fuck up. I think I've solved that problem. So tonight we're continuing that discussion that we started last week around the CEMK and points of entry to Cyberpunk Red in general, right? And our kind of favorite ways to navigate that. And I think we may have talked just a little bit top level about the subject I want to bring back tonight, which is the Cyberpunk Red supplements. So let me start by having a simple definition put out there, right? What is a supplement? Okay, so a supplement is not a DLC, at least not how I'm defining it for this discussion, right? It's not a DLC. It is not the more minor sorts of added content like the data pack. It is instead the big stuff, the hardbound books that are not the core rulebook. So the core rulebook, you need that to drive everything in Red. Without the core rulebook, you're missing a ton of context. You're missing a ton of elements to the thing. But if you want to expand beyond that, there are 3 books we have so far, with a 4th we know of on the way. The 3 we have right now are Tales of the Red Street Stories, Black Chrome, and Danger Gal Dossier. Oh, thank you for the bits, LCC. Appreciate that. So, with that said, that's our definition that we're working with. It's a hardbound book, and it is one of those like major supplements that we get on top of the game that is like a major expansion of some element of it, right? So when interface isn't included in this, data pack's not included in this, only the 3 major hardbound books. Each of them costs $40 as well. So like this is, we've got like a pretty complete definition here. So to kind of kick this off, let me, I guess, share kind of what I look for in supplements and like why I think that the 3 we have so far are actually like all really good in their own right. I'm looking for one, a supplement to add a significant element of something to my game, right? Whether that's like more gear or cyberware, or, you know, a ton of extra like NPC options, or just like giving me more complex ideas than you could pack into like an article in a DLC or something. Like those are the things in my mind that are what kind of sets the supplements apart, and they're a big thing that like when I'm buying that, obviously $40 is not a small amount of money. It's kind of a lot of money. So making sure that that doesn't feel like a waste, especially because there are 3 of them, so that's $120. You know, that's kind of where we begin. So let's start with I guess the earliest one to release, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Diamond, you can correct me if I am, was Tales of the Red Street Stories.
Tales of the Red Street Stories, my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like for me, when I rate the 3 of them, this is the one I rate the lowest, not because it is bad. I want to make that very clear. But I can write my own stories. So for me, it's more of just reference material and added stuff to run on weeks where I don't have other things to run. So it doesn't mean as much to me personally. But that is not to say that it doesn't matter to people that need ideas or, you know, want more from it. And Diamond, I'm sure you can definitely talk at any point here to like what you like so much about it compared to the other supplements, because I would love to kind of hear your take on it.
Okay, so to understand, for me, coming into Cyberpunk Red, it was kind of me picking up the torch when I first ran with a group where I had to pick up because our other GM, and this GM was known for kind of dropping off in the middle of campaigns, so I picked up the torch on this one. So what happened was I ran, you know, stories, ran jobs, so on and so forth. Tales of the Red Street Stories. What that book does is it provided me a view at what a real Cyberpunk Red job looks like a full-length mission would look like, with multiple phases that lead up to a great climax. Yes, we have how to, you know, script beats in the back of the book, but now that I have this, it is a great launch pad for me to go and see what kind of possibilities there are. I couldn't even imagine that Rogue AIs could do what they can do because of Tales of the Red Street Stories. Or the fact that, you know, people could do some really, really, really heinous stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's exactly, funny enough, the same thing I like about Tales of the Red is it's like a really good active example of like what a beat chart gig looks like. And without it, it's kind of hard, I think, to like visualize out how that beat chart works. That's like, I think does easy mode run on a beat chart? I think it does, right?
I think it does.
Yeah.
It does.
So like
we didn't have easy mode at that point.
Right. Yeah, no, this is before it came out, before easy mode existed. But yeah, to say that it's a fantastic example of the beat chart system used to its full potential, as well as like, yeah, it's an eye opener to the world and like what's possible to happen within it. The other added benefit of Tales of the Red Street Stories is that it one, it gives you some new stat blocks to work with if you want to add some of these characters to your own games. But two, it also gives you insight into kind of every district in Night City to some extent and like what's going on there. There are a few I think it overlooks, but not many of them. It's definitely covers more than it doesn't, and that is incredibly good. And it's got this really nice way of like giving you the GM like a ton of tools at your disposal to build like plot threads off of and stuff like that, since it's not designed as a through play campaign where you're going cover to cover and just playing the campaign. You are able to like pick and choose, like, okay, this week we're going to run like Agents of Desire, and the next week I'm going to run Staying Vigilant, and then the week after that I'm going to run not a Thread to Wear. And it's, you can kind of jump around in the book because there's no one gig in there that feels better as a starting point than another. The only two you really... There's only a set of two that you really have to like be mindful of, which is one Red Night in order. Well, yeah, I was gonna say like, because we got One Red Night, which is part 2 of Bathed in Red, so you really can't run that one before you run Bathed in Red because it won't make sense. Or the other one, which is a little less problematic in that same way, but is Reaping the Reaper, which is technically part of a trilogy. The only problem with that is that the other two elements of that trilogy are scream sheets out of the data pack. So you do need to own the data pack in order to like actually get the full trilogy out. That said, we played Reaping the Reaper without playing the trilogy at my table, and it was fine. Like it was good. It was like straight up one of the most impactful sessions we've had, and that's without any of the 4 context to it. So it's like, you can do that and it's fine. Like it'll play fine. You'll have a great time.
Yeah.
But
you're, because like when we did Reaping the Reaper, we had the pre-context, but when you come into it like midway, you're getting like dropped into a mess. You are there to collect eddies, and you really don't have much more personal investment in what the Reaper is outside a problem between you and Payday until it gets later into that mission.
Yeah. And it is one of those things that like, if you have that kind of carry through, it's really quite good to feel that and like go through all of it. But you absolutely don't need to have done that for Reaping the Reaper like you do for Bathed in Red and One Red Night. Like that you absolutely have to do those in order. Technically at the end of Bathed in Red, there is an option to not do One Red Night. However, it is probably the most fucked up way to end that gig if you do choose that. Or at the bare minimum, it's like very anti-cyberpunk in my eyes to take the route that leads you to not experiencing One Red Night. But it's possible. You could not experience One Red Night as a result of that. But it's like a whole extra gig, like 15-page gig you're missing if you do that.
Another mission in there is a bucket full of popcorn-flavored kibble. Now, I've heard mixed reviews on this mission, and I totally get it. It is
we skipped it at
outlier.
We skipped it at my IRL table because we're like, we kind of want to keep doing the dark shit. that's just my table.
I guess for me, like the times I've ran a bucket full of popcorn flavored kibble, where it does voice crack.
No, you're good.
Where it doesn't really shine in the violence and all the dark and bad roar of Cyberpunk Red, it really shows who you are as a person and the choices that you make during that mission. like how, like, you know, it's got simple things like a fetch quest, and you know, like, hey, I know a guy, and hey, slip this item into this person's private area, because, well, not their private area, but their
I was
private
about to say,
quarters.
I'm like, Diamond, I've heard a story, but I don't know that we want to talk about that particular one on the podcast.
I mean, look, if we're talking about like Team Elflines Online deciding to put a tracking bug in someone's butt cheek, I mean, oh well. But what I'm talking about is just some of the things that you can do to make extra money or make some money while being a part of the film set.
Mm-hmm.
It it really puts some writing on the wall for some of the players.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know there was a couple that were just like, yeah, I'll do this. This sounds like a great idea. And then one other one's just like, hey, let's not do that, especially when we have two very powerful people in the film industry watching what we're doing out here. This
Yeah.
sounds like an awful idea.
Something about this will get our asses canned or worse. Like, yeah.
And you can either make some really, really powerful friends or some very, very powerful enemies with in a bucket full of popcorn flavored kibble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, you get to find, you know, some pretty nifty new locations as well. I learned that in that mission, and this is just one little teaser of some of the many things you can learn. Up in Watson, there is a a neo Viking tavern up in Watson that makes real mead. And
Yep.
as someone who is a mead enjoyer,
I also do quite enjoy mead. That's a side note for later. When we go to Gen Con this year, we need to look up and see if there's mead nearby. That would actually be something to do at Gen Con. Or maybe one of the what are they called? The block party trucks has mead. They wouldn't be inappropriate for the kind of convention they're throwing there.
oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, but that's
No.
for later. This is where for those of you who are watching on my end of things, Diamond is taking donations to going and attending Gen Con this year. I will send you all over to hopefully help her with that. You can't, that's fine, but she do need the money to go. Yeah.
I'm happy to say that, like, I'm roughly like $200 off from being able to afford my plane ticket.
We're getting there. We're close.
Now I just kind of gotta get, you know, a few other things squared away. We're trying, but anyway, some of the other things with Tales of the Red Street Stories that's introduced in there, there is some concept, like, outside, like, you know, the stories that are told and some of the awesome adventures that you and your party can go on, that kind of really helps you pull yourself together, because that's what pulled me and some really close friends together, was Tales of the Red Street Stories. Like, these friends and I, we still go on about it, even though we're now like states apart, well, in some cases countries apart. Our med tech, she's now all the way over in New Zealand.
Jeez.
She thought, you know, she didn't want to stay in the States anymore, so she just left for New Zealand. And then I think our tech is now in Germany.
Wow. Yeah, you're not kidding. Literally, like, every major face of the world is basically like, you got a player from the party there. That's wild.
And then we got one of the other things that it introduces is concepts and ideas that help you as a GM really create challenges, create enemies, create something new, off-putting, scary, exciting, joy-inducing, adrenaline pumping, just all these awesome, fantastic, and different concepts out there.
Yeah. Like
Drummer in the Whale is a real good one for this one, for that one.
yeah, like I think without spoiling too much of the book, it's very much like you should get it if you really like having, if you're like me and you like feel like you need a template to learn like how the game is supposed to work, or how the beat charts are supposed to work. Because like right now, I'm in the middle of writing a whole gig with beat chart and
Nice.
a flow chart, and oh my god, it's a lot when you actually try to make it presentable. Because like in your notes, it can be simple bullet points, right? You're just like, yeah, this is where they start, this is what happens then, this is what happens after, and then this is how we conclude it. You're like, awesome.
I mean, like, beat charts don't have to be like fully scripted out. That could just be what the bullet points are.
Yeah, they do exactly. When you're prepping for your own group at home and no one else, that works. It works so well. I do it for Neon Inferno every single week, like clockwork. But this is something I'm planning on publishing on my Patreon. So therefore,
Okay.
yeah, it's like it needs to
All
be
right.
readable and comprehensible by someone that isn't me. And therein lies the problem. Sorry for bumping my mic, by the way, if that came through, but that's the problem with it. Is it's like you do, it's a lot. It is a lot when you look at that book and see how these are published out. Like those beats are a lot. They're very information dense. In a lot of cases, they've got a lot going on. And so it is something that like having that written example to go by, super helpful. But it is something that like, do not ever feel like you need to go that hard unless you're someone like me who wants to publish it and like actually make it something, that gets consumed by other people. Then maybe do what they do in that book and like dress it up that way, because it is kind of important. But yeah, so that's Tales of the Red done. We've only burned like a third of my time, so we're pretty much on board here, I think. Unless you have something to add.
All right. Well, I think if we're going in thirds, that works pretty well. But I guess last thing with Tales of the Red, it adds a solid amount of new locations all across the map.
Very true. Very, very true. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. Yeah, and so now we're going to talk about the other one that adds a bunch of new locations to the map, actually, which is Black Chrome. Because I hadn't realized exactly how in-depth this book was until actually today when I was scrolling through it for your session, and I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean? So here's the way that Black Chrome works, right? It is the one supplement that I highly recommend even players get their hands on. Most supplements we have so far like fairly leaned heavily into the GMs in terms of like knowing how to write your gigs, and obviously like Tales of the Red itself is a gig book. It is something that the whole book is essentially for the GM's eyes only. Black Chrome, on the other hand, is very even about this, where most of the book, I think about 2/3 of it, is new gear and apps and cyberware and vehicles and all kinds of fun stuff for players and GMs alike, because it is just like a gear compendium. It is written like a catalog, and it is wonderful. Black Chrome is my favorite of the 3 supplements we have so far. And a big part of that is just because of how much artwork is in the book. Like, you have literally got a piece of art for every single item in the book. Like, none are left out in that regard, which is insane. Like, that is actually crazy how there is not a single item that doesn't have artwork in that book. And then there's artwork on top of that still that gets put into things like the night market section at the back, the Economy 101 chapter, Like, there's maybe 10 or less pages in the entire book that don't have art on them, which is absolutely wild. Jay also went on record last Gen Con saying that it cost like triple their typical budget for a book because of the amount of art they had in it. So, you know, you get a little of one and a little of the other. You get a mix, but ultimately, it was worth it in my opinion. That's the book that, like, when I've been helping them at cons, it's one of the easiest ones to sell people on, just because it is like so easy to see like what the value of that is. And it's clear like there was a ton of love put into the book, to the artwork, to like the design. And the really cool stuff it adds is, one, it's got like a full breakdown of the economy, which some of you out there, if you are listening to the podcast for the first time, and you haven't heard me ranting and raving before over on my channel about things, economy is really important. And that it sounds like this boring fucking idea of like, oh my God, why the hell is economy fun? Economy is the thing that the GM uses to make me feel bad because I'm poor and the GM knows it and they want to mock me when I have 100 eddies too few to afford that fucking Perseus at the night market. Yes, it is that. But also, the economy and the rules behind it are what govern and make the Time of the Red a really unique time and place to be. It's what lends fixers their power within the broader scope of the game. It's a lot of how like the items you buy and the things you have access to are given that access. And so having full rules for it and explanation for them is extremely helpful, especially if you're a new GM. Like, it'll get your head put on right immediately. And it took me literally until this book came out in, I think it was early 2022, to really wrap my head around that was why this was the way that, or no, it was early 2023, excuse me, that this came out. So like, it took that long for me to really wrap my head around that and like get that idea through my head. But yeah, I just can't say enough good things about it. It's got stat blocks for a bunch of fixers. It's got maps for their various night markets that they typically hold. And it's got a page, this is the thing I was talking about, that details where you might get stuff in Night City that isn't a night market. Like, and it gives you names for different, like, whether it's a bodega or a chain market or day markets or whatever. Like, get a hold of that, because like all that info is really, really good.
I suppose another thing that Black Chrome has to offer, and I'm more talking on behalf of the as much as I've grown a little bit at our very handy fellows, the techs, you guys are spoiled rotten with all the different possibilities you guys get out of Black Chrome.
It's true.
You know, stuff to print at, half price. $500, and then boom, you got, linear frame Sigma. But for for $2,500, boom, any of those linear frames in Black Chrome made in a month. And trying to think what other things that come in here. Nomads, you guys get a nice little buff with Black Chrome.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Vehicles.
Yeah, it's a massive deal. Nomad access is a rule that Black Chrome literally gives to nomads. That is, I cannot overstate how good that is. Like, you can just have a full vehicle. Here, you have options. You no longer need to like spend your first 4 ranks of Nomad getting one vehicle and upgrading it 3 times. Or getting like 2 vehicles and upgrading only one of them twice. Like instead you have options now. They aren't bad options either. They treat vehicles like actual vehicles. Where you have like different reasons why you'd get one versus another, and like that really helps nomads quite a lot. But yeah, I love the vehicles chapter. I think that's probably the Mega Hauler Chads Unite. I'm just saying, Mega Hauler is love, Mega Hauler is life. When you see your first Mega Hauler, you'll understand. You won't be the same. I promise. But yeah, Black Chrome is truly like, there's almost no reason not to get it, which is why I rate it so highly. It is one of those things that like is as essential, I think, as like the core rulebook is to the game, because it just has so much to it. And it, like Diamond mentioned, it really does ignite your imagination if you're in the position like a tech to like invent stuff and like build stuff and what an upgrade can look like for an item, or, you know, all that kind of thing. You get a little bit of all that in Black Chrome. So yeah.
And one other thing that Black Chrome introduced, which we now have a DLC for it, but is apps. There are apps. Which, by the way, I have a digital gladiator champion in one of my parties, Emmerron. They haven't lost a fight yet.
That's fun. Do they use an internal agent?
Nope.
Loser.
They do not. Well, the problem is their cyber audio suite's already packed with other stuff, and they didn't think about it. It's like, damn, I could increase the risk.
It's time for them to tech upgrade that shit and add another slot on so they can do that.
That's the problem. It is tech upgraded. They're just like, you mean to tell me I could push the envelope further and just do it all in my head and make it some greater risk? Why did you tell me sooner? Like, don't get me wrong, it's not because he's scared. He just didn't know.
Time to swap one of those things out. Time to make room. But yeah, no, it's I love everything about Black Chrome is just, it's good.
Oh, DM Chromie, I have ran Agents of Desire.
So good.
I've ran that.
So good. Such a great adventure.
I'm not going to get into extreme details on Tales of the Red to not spoil it for anyone. Trying to think. Other things that came in Black Chrome as well is names and stat blocks for some of our favorite fixers.
Yep.
Like, of course, we have Molly Anderson and Rex Royale.
Yep.
From the Jumpstart kit. They are now present in Black Chrome. Well, Rex's stat block has only improved has gotten a few adjustments.
It's gotten a bit better. But, yeah, like his stat block is definitely better. And like the fact that we have even some like that we like the first place we really heard much more than like the blurb they get in People of Night City in the core book. People like Wood Chipper, which is like awesome that we now have like full stats for her, because holy shit, she's like, if you want to talk about a character's stat block that will give your tech all kinds of ideas for what tech upgrades can do, she's one of them. She's one of them. She's real cool. Mostly because she has 15 body and could absolutely pulp you by just punching you. It is insane.
Like, ma'am, could you kindly actually? There is a certain part of my community that is thirsty for Wood Chipper.
I'm not surprised.
I don't blame them one fucking bit. I would let that woman fold me like a chair.
Oh my
but also,
God.
I think she's also actually good at judo. So I mean, on top of that, like, she's good at martial arts.
In other words, she would quite literally fold you like a chair. Yes.
And then we got Mr. Kernigan as well, the King of Night City.
Mm-hmm.
His stat block is in there as well. Operator rank 9, reputation 5, and his
And
stats.
summary loser when it comes to face downs with Uncle Larry.
And then also, of course, partially because, yes, he does represent the LGBT community. Three-piece.
Three-piece is very cool. I really
Our
love him.
media fixer. Oh, he's so good.
He is very good. Three-piece is like, fun fact, guys, keep an eye out for the new thing that I'm writing that I mentioned before. Three-piece is the fixer you work with in that adventure. So I do have Three-piece in there along with his husband. Both of them are major players in that, so it's fun.
Apparently, I managed to get my lore correct on who Brain is, because
Yes!
I knew there was a Brain mentioned in Edgerunners Inc. It's like, oh, that's Brain. Yep.
Well, and they mentioned that is his husband in Black Chrome in one of the sidebars on his page. So like, yeah, like we triple confirmed it up and down with everybody, and I was like, holy shit, that's insane. I did not know that he made an appearance there. I did not read that sidebar or remember it at least. So like, that's crazy. It was really cool to kind of put all that together.
And then also, of course, there is Bug, their teenage daughter,
Yeah.
who is also the camera handler for picking. Is it Picking the Three-Piece? No. Trying to remember the name of the title of
Hold
Three-Piece's
up.
show.
I'll grab it because it's in All About Agents, and I do, or I should at least have that one up. Hustling with Three-Piece.
Yep.
Yep.
So, yeah, fantastic. And also a love for 1970s glam rock. And you know what? I'm here for it.
But yeah, Black Chrome, awesome book. That is, like, if I were to pick one that if you're getting into Red and you want to buy one book or one extra thing along with your core rulebook, you've got the money to spend on a full price supplement, Black Chrome is the one. It is like, please get this, because it is so useful to everyone that's new to the game. There's like no lack of good shit in there. So yeah.
You can even buy fingers.
You can indeed. This is where we got cyber fingers. So yeah, modular cyber hands and cyber fingers are their own section of the Black Chrome cyberware section in the book. So yeah, it's fun. So the final supplement we'll be talking about tonight, because it's the only one that we have genuine context for, and we read the whole book end to end, is Danger Gal Dossier. Now, Danger Gal Dossier is the newest supplement as of this episode. We know we're getting one later this year, which is another Tales book, Tales of the Red Forlorn Hope, which is our first look at like what an RTG design campaign looks like. So those of you who are like me and you like writing campaigns, but those of you out there who are feeling like you're lacking a little something to like have a confident, like, I know how to write a campaign, look for that. It's due out by the end of the year. We don't know much more than that. But what we do have, and we're here to talk about Danger Gal Dossier at this point. So just wanted to say that, so none of you are like, but this is out now. I get it. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months from now, maybe it is out. But like we are living in the middle of May 2024. So we're talking about what we have right now. So Danger Gal Dossier is an NPC guide. So Danger Gal Dossier is effectively like the game's, you could say, monster manual or something akin to that. It's like a creature compendium, except it's people, not creatures. They are human beings. Some of them shit human beings, but they are human beings. And it gives you a variety of factions from all over the city. So you have kind of archetypal, stat blocks for each sort of enemy type you might come across. And not everyone in there is meant to be an enemy, exactly. Many of them are friendly. Generation Red is a great example of that, where they are there to be more friend-shaped than enemy-shaped. And so the idea, though, is that this gives you a metric ton of stat blocks. I don't even know what the breakdown on the number of stat blocks in the book is, but it's a lot. It's a lot. I think each faction has, I think the smallest faction in the book that's properly identified as a faction, like, I think it's 4.
It's a tie between the Piranhas and Network 54 for 3 in each faction.
3 in each. Okay, got it. Yeah. And Piranhas, I mean, you kind of can adapt some of the other stat blocks in the book to make them into Piranhas. I will say that as well. Piranhas are just, they're like one...
They're booster gangers.
They're booster gangers. They're one step from a yo gang. They're like, they're not a yo gang anymore, but they're like, they're college aged, like young college kids that just fell off. But yeah, like, bottom line, Danger Gal's main selling point is that you get a bunch of new NPCs that you just can play with out of the box, and they'll work fine, more than fine in a lot of cases. You also get the rules for building your own at every difficulty level, from basic mook all the way up to hardened boss, which is kind of insane because we actually, before this, didn't have any hardened bosses, at least by name. So now we do have a classification for what a hardened boss looks like, which is wild. We also only had 1 boss stat block before this came out too, which was the Cyber Psycho at the back of the core rulebook. So the fact that we now have hardened and like a greater variety of regular bosses, massive dub, because we had hardened everything else out of the core rulebook. So we had hardened mooks, lieutenants, and mini bosses. But now we have some variety on the highest end of the scale, which is, I think, where a lot of GMs, including myself, really had to struggle to like kind of figure out what that looked like. But yeah, I'm not here to take this whole topic up on myself. So, Diamond, please tell me, what do you like about this book?
One of the like the variety that's offered, and the fact that it's not all clustered on the island. So I guess just to rattle off who's all in here in case you haven't seen the awesome little teasers put out by Dice TTRPG back in last year. We've got 6th Street. Yeah, that's 6th Street. The bunch of idiots that you see in 2077, this is their predecessors. You have the Bozos, basically like one of the circus of Bozos, because I guess a group of like a family of Bozos is called a circus.
Yep.
You have Danger Gal's Puma Squad, which is some of Danger Gal's best of the best agents, including Mouse, who is seen over in the Cyberpunk Red book. She's seen in ads in a lot of these. The Digital Divas, which we talked about with Jay. There's a retcon with the Digital Divas.
Yes.
Where they go from being an all-female punk band to a brat punk band. That's quite the mix. And honestly, I kind of like it.
I kind of dig
the attitude that they bring.
Yeah, I dig the retcon too, to an extent, because it's like, they are genuinely interesting characters that we have. And like the thing about Danger Gal you have to realize, and this is honestly, in my opinion, a selling point, they all have figures through Monster Fight Club. That's where they originally got the art, which is why it's going to look a lot more like a mini, because they kind of worked backwards from, we have a mini, here's an art render of the mini that you can put in a book. So like, some people didn't really like the mini artwork. I'm not one of them. I think it looks fine. I really don't see a problem with it, because the main idea is just to get an image in your head anyway, and it's going to look about the same as your typical Tailspire, which is how I know quite a few people in the community build their characters, if they're doing it in like an actual mini maker, as opposed to it being like, hey, I'm going to like make my Edge Runner in 2077's character creator and then like take a screenshot so that you can see what they look like or whatever. That element of it, I feel like is very much, it's fine. And it's good because now if you want to have a tabletop full of some of these characters, you can go buy your minis from Monster Fight Club and you have minis for them, which is something we didn't really have for Cyberpunk for quite a while. We had a few also through Monster Fight Club, but like we didn't have a ton. So now that we have a bunch, it's really nice. I'm a huge fan of us having all of these stat blocks. And the other two things that Danger Gal has in it that we haven't talked about yet, it's got a bunch of cyberware. Mind you, most of it was released for free at some point in the past. But it is in there. And a bit of it is from a product called Microchrome that they released, which was technically the back of the Penny Arcade pins they sold at one point. But those are some really cool items that were on Microchrome. So three of the four of them are in Danger Gal dossier. But yeah, go ahead, Diamond.
Yeah, it's of course some of the other factions included here. We got Edge Runners, which they do take the original crew from the Jumpstart kit and do put them in here as well. Generation Red, which, they're a Yo gang. Please don't attack the children. Please think of the children. Think of your humanity. Maelstrom, what's humanity? They have Atom Smasher at home. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. They don't have Atom Smasher. They do, however, have Atom Smasher at home in there, and they're an interesting character. I do enjoy that.
They also have a lot of terrifying stat blocks.
They do. Yeah.
NCPD Precinct 1, the guys on the island. An interesting mix. Cavalry is in that group compared to Edge Runners, which I'm glad to see that she made a reprisal in here. N54 is present with Fiona Hayes, who is mentioned in the core rulebook, and now she finally has her own stat block, her own bodyguard, and her own tech.
Well, and she's a boss level enemy, I believe, too.
Yep.
Without any combat stats.
Yeah, but she is the most trusted face for news in the city.
It's true. But it's
probably alongside Barbara Dahl.
Right. I just want to throw that out there that you can have boss enemies. This is another great thing about what the book teaches you is like you can have a boss enemy that doesn't focus on combat. They're just an actual base of power within the city.
Of course, we got the piranhas, but it's more their higher ups in the group, including actual artwork for the Tsunami Arms Helix is presented here as well. Yeah. We have the Aldecaldo Sightseers, which to understand, the Aldecaldo Sightseers is a family in the Aldecaldo Nation. Racer from the Jumpstart kit, she shows up with that group. Then we have Team Monster, one of the groups that ran under Mike Pondsmith. And yes, the entire cast is there. I'm trying to find the names of each of their members here.
Well, we have Hammer, because I believe Hammer's presented as part of them.
Hammer is Edge Runner. We got Serial.
Oh yeah, Serial's definitely there.
Isolate, Lucky, Nox, Paladin, and Too Tall.
Too Tall, yeah. I love Serial. Serial's my favorite of that crew. I absolutely love. I mean, the best part is he's played by Matthew Lillard, but beyond that, he's a crazy net runner. Which who doesn't love a crazy net runner?
We can always appreciate a snarky net runner.
Yes, exactly. Especially on this show.
Then, of course, Trauma Team, the Tiger Claws, earlier Origins, and Wakako is present for that one.
Wakako is, and I've used her Neon Inferno as a result of that.
And then, of course, the Zoners.
Yep. They've got a lot of good stuff. the last thing they have in the book, which is also really cool, and this is why this is part of why I rate this one over Tales of the Red when I need to pick. It has an adventure in the back that runs off the beat chart system. So if you need the example of a beat chart, you actually get it in the book, which is kind of wild. But there's an adventure at the back of the book called The Incident, and it is great. Honestly, I love that adventure so much. It's very well put together, and it adds some additional stat blocks that weren't in the rest of the book, which is another massive plus for it, as it adds some stat blocks for another faction, but I won't talk about that. We will not talk about that because it's better that you see it on your own. But it is a great gig, and it's a probably good 2-session gig that you can go through with your players, and have a good time with it. It's a good old whodunit, and your Edgerunner crew is just tracking down the titular Danger Gal dossier through the streets of Night City, essentially finding out who took it, and it's a lot of fun. So there is one more thing that I want to tack on before we shift to Q&A about all the supplements we've talked about tonight.
I was going to suggest players, if you do grab Danger Gal dossier, this is a good chance to maybe find ideas for contacts to add to your list as well.
Yes.
Down the road after you get Black Chrome, because Black Chrome should be what you go for first.
It's the first one. It's really important. I mean, and honestly, Black Chrome has really the fixers at the back are the ones you want to make contacts of at some point.
Oh,
in my opinion. So with that said, the thing I want to add, and this is kind of for every single supplement we've talked about this episode, all of them have a free DLC supplement that we've gotten on top of them, which are the plus DLCs. So there is a Tales of the Red Street Stories plus, there's a Black Chrome plus, and a Danger Gal Dossier plus. These are like the director's cut of each of these DLCs. They are each of the supplements, I should say. They are essentially like extensions of them for the content that they just either couldn't fit into the book, or that it wouldn't have made much sense to present part of it as a part of the book, just because of the use for them or whatever. So like, for example, Tales of the Red, you get a bunch of character tokens and some stat blocks, as well as full page maps for each of the gigs that have maps in the book. Black Chrome Plus has a bunch of extra gear and stuff that gets added onto Molly Anderson's Night Market, including probably one of my favorite guns in the entire game, which it's just super fun. It's the One True Love sniper rifle, aka the waifu, the waifu rifle. It is a beautiful, beautiful gun, and it will judge you for firing guns that aren't it and be jealous and give you poor results as a result of that. It's a great time, honestly. Highly recommend Black Chrome Plus. It also gives you some like visual stuff for like what a linear frame looks like, what certain styles look like, and it does give you a pretty good breakdown of like all of the little stuff that's kind of left over at the end of Black Chrome. And then finally we have Danger Gal Dossier Plus, which comes with tokens for everyone in the book, along with there's a few other things. There's some extra stat blocks you don't get in the book proper, and I believe some
mission
campaign
ideas.
Yeah, I was about to say mission and campaign ideas, I think, were the other thing. So it's good stuff. I highly recommend, if you already own any of those supplements and you don't have those in your library somewhere, for the plus DLC that follows it, go check it out. You'll probably not be disappointed by what you find. But Diamond, do you have anything else to add about the supplements before we move to QA?
I think we're good here.
Okay. So let me update my title card real quick here. So we are going to Q&A. Oh, goddamn, that was not Q&A. There we go. Q&A. Wampus. We have arrived. Here we are, the last part of the show where we answer your questions that you've been submitting either during the show or before it via our email or comment sections. Again, the email, if you want to submit questions, is wireheadspod@googlegroups.com.
We got 6 questions this week.
Holy fuck, that's a lot of questions this week.
All right.
Let's start.
Some of them might be pretty easy. Actually, we talked about this one. Will we see the 2050s in red? We've had a discussion about this with both Jay Gray and James Hutt.
Yeah.
Possibly.
It's
more abstract where the time takes place.
Yeah, like, will we get an idea of what the 2050s entail in red? I have to imagine to some small extent we will, just because we already know the mission kit is going to come with a timeline. So I'd be kind of like, it'd be weird, I think, for us to not get any events that happen during the 2050s in that way. And depending on how the rules work for advancing the timeline in terms of tech and stuff like that, you could run a game potentially in the 2050s. But yeah, as far as like super official, this is only 2050s. Do not play this if you're in the 2040s. I don't think we're not going to get that granular. Like we're going to get the events that happen in the world on a timeline, and that's about it. But yeah, so to answer that quickly, yes and no. Just depends how deeply you want that to be detailed. Will we know what happened to the 2050s in red? Probably. Will we know, will there be any missions or DLCs set specifically in that time period? Probably not.
All right. Next question. Is the Blade Runner retro... Oh, okay. So this came from a fan of mine directly who shot me this one. So you're a fan of like that really gritty, dark and dirty splash with neon aesthetic, but also like at the same time, like the apartment buildings that are like they have the Victorian wrought iron accents to them. Mm-hmm. Is that aesthetic a possible thing to see in red?
Well, and they also mentioned retrofuturism, which is like the big chunky monitors and stuff we see. You could. I mean, at your table, anything's possible. Is the easy answer I have for that.
For me, like with like some of the things with retrofuturism, I could see this like you are walking into a shop in the old combat zone. Like a tech's just got stuff strewn every which way. Some large monitors keeping track of what he's working on, but also like with some of the other like architectural aesthetics, like we have like the Tyrell Corporation building, this massive towering skyscraper, and some of the other things they talk about is like how the city was being built up in the Blade Runner RPG specifically. Where the lower floors are where the poor people live, and the higher floors are where the wealthy live. And if I had to go out on a limb, all right, at the top of some of the mega buildings you see in 2077, there are penthouses. There are where the wealthy live. Mm-hmm. And I have to assume the further down the shaft you go, like V was living probably like what, in the middle of the apartment building when they first started with their little studio apartment.
Yeah, just about. They're somewhere in the mid levels, I would think. Yeah.
And
like,
then
I think, because I'm just trying to imagine it from like my memory of the game. But yeah, I think they're pretty much dead near the center, like vertically speaking, of the building. Halfway up.
And then like David's apartment on the street level, I don't know if it seemed like it was close to the same size as V's, If not, it seemed smaller.
No, it was the same size. The difference was how they utilized the space, because like the closet that was V's like armory was used for something else in David's apartment. I think that's like where their washing machines were. But
Probably.
they're it's very much the same style of apartment, same mega building type structure that he lived in. But yeah, like that element of it. I think the biggest thing is if you're after retrofuturism, it depends which elements of it you're really after. If you're after like the big chunky like early cell phone stuff and
Wires everywhere.
yeah, like like that sort of aesthetic doesn't align as neatly with Red. It aligns more with 2020. Like 2020 definitely had some retrofuturism going on in it. Red, it feels much less like that. It feels much closer to like what's depicted in 77 in terms of like the look of things and how they feel and all of that. It's very like a much more modern take on, I think, the classic cyberpunk setting. But yeah, that's I hope that kind of answers the question, because yeah, it's you can do anything at your table. Anything can be reflavored or look like you want it to look. But Night City's not as big as LA, and the way corporations and power structures work in Night City are vastly different than those of the Blade Runner universe, where like Blade Runner has like one mega corporation that rules over the entire city, whereas in Cyberpunk, especially in Red, it's like a mix of different corporations that all own a small part of the larger whole.
All right. Next one was an interesting question. I figured maybe I'd pitch this one by you. Could gambling be used to help me determine the DV of a check? Like, help you determine the probability of, like, how well will this go for me?
I probably need that to be better defined to give a good answer. Gambling is the skill used to define how good of an either like what the odds on like a table game are, or your typical kind of gambling like casino games. It's also used per the ELO-TCG DLC. It's used as I just realized that was 3 acronyms in a row. But Elflines Online, the trading card game, that DLC has a section in it for using gambling to cheat at certain games like card games. Gambling isn't really mass applicable. It's not like a meta knowledge skill if you think of it that way, right? This is actually the purpose for, there's a great example of this in another skill, bribery. So bribery isn't a skill to use when you want to influence someone through bribery necessarily. It's not like you're rolling bribery and then just saying, I'm bribing the guy, I'm giving him 10 eddies or whatever to tell him to fuck off or take a break or whatever so he's out of our way. Bribery is the skill of analyzing someone, like reading their tells and figuring out what would sway them. It's a way to size them up. So like if you are trying to figure out the DV of something, you can do one of two things typically. One is you have them roll the skill itself because they're using their knowledge of the skill itself that they're going to attempt the DV with to figure it out ahead of time. Or they can roll a complementary skill. So like an example of this might be like rolling science, physics, for example, before making a tech roll to figure out how the electrical is going to run together in whatever it is they're either trying to, crack or invent or whatever, But yeah, you're generally not rolling gambling to just figure out DVs of checks and things like that. It's like, tell me what the odds are, the skill. It is specific to playing the odds in like a table game context or something like that.
I personally, I'd say for someone that might be really good at figuring out their odds at like a table game, that they might apply that way of thinking towards other situations. But I would say you'd have to have a character that has dedicated themselves to being able to understand, what their chances might be with something. And I could see gambling as being a complementary skill to finding whether this is going to be an easy or difficult DV. So, let's say maybe a fixer who happens to be, really good at negotiating, wants to really see if they could push the envelope on something. I could possibly see gambling being something of like, if I try to, pick up this one extra load, am I going to fuck myself before night market kind of situation?
Yeah. Like, there's definitely contexts for it where maybe you could use it, to like add a complementary bonus, but the skill as it's supposed to be used per its description is more around the odds in a game than they are about odds in other things. So yeah, it's maybe cross applicable, but it's not typically, I would argue. It's really not. That's not the point of that skill.
I'd say you'd have to have a gambler who's really good at understanding their chances before you really make that something that somebody could see if this might be a little bit difficult for you, or this should be pretty easy for you.
And in general, just so everyone's clear on this too, unlike games like D&D, where the DC of something can be kind of all over the place, and there's not like a ton of standardization to it, in Cyberpunk, we have standardized DVs. So you know where your breakpoints typically sit, and unless you're rolling contested with somebody, you can typically rely on your knowledge of like, 9, 13, 15, 17, 21, 24, and 29, I believe is the last one. Yeah. So like it's those are your standard breakpoints for DVs. And they're largely set by how easy or difficult it is to make the check. Or to like do whatever the check is representing, right? But yeah, that's what that is. That's what that is. But yeah, so that I think, unless, did you have anything else to say on that one, Diamond?
I think we're good there. What's the next one?
Would a firefight between elf lions happen in meat space? 110
yes.
fucking % yes. It would absolutely happen. There's a story of a guy named Dallas, and that's exactly what happened. An elf lion came to hunt him down because he's too good at PvP, and they did not like that. So absolutely.
And then, of course, like IRL, this has actually happened before, where a World of Warcraft player kept getting killed. So they finally did some funny computer magic to figure out who this guy was that kept killing them. Went over to their house and, let's say PvP got on a very real level very, very quick.
Yep. It absolutely would happen depending on like what the elf line on the aggressing end sought to gain by attacking the others in real life. But there are absolutely groups that would fight over, things in game in meat space. Absolutely. Or, maybe you're trying to go for world first on a new raid that's dropped. And rather than going about that legitimately, you're like, well, I don't know, this other group would blow us out of the fucking water. So why don't we blow their brains out instead? And then we don't have to worry about them in the upcoming race. Again.
Look, we're just trying to get to the fucking Temple of Slime.
Again, FBI, I'm telling you, this is all talking about a game. We are not actually threatening this shit in reality. Please do not put us on lists. We are very nice people. I swear to God. This is all a video game.
Not even
Thank
a video game, just a TTRPG.
Same difference in the government's eyes. Of course, they also had that report just come out recently where all gamers are terrorists. So,
Wait, what?
Whatever. It's maybe a subject for a future episode because there's a lot. But the really brief Reader's Digest version is there is a think tank or some like government like a government subcontractor of some kind that
you said think tank. That narrows it down real quick.
They submitted up something about like, here's some problems we're identifying that need solving from a legal standpoint. And one of those problems was the rise of domestic terrorism through channels like gaming and social media spaces. So like, was it all bullshit? Not really, because some of it did strike true. Was some of it very misguided thinking though? And very lopsided thinking? Also, yes. But yeah, that might need a deeper dive in a separate video or forum of some kind, because this is probably not the time to discuss it because it's a lot. But yeah, it just know it's a deep dive, and it came out in the last, I want to say like week or two that report existed. So it's fun. But yeah.
All right. This is a request from a viewer. Can we have how to build X streams? Now, I'm not sure if that could really be applicable over here at Wireheads as we're more discussing topics, but I don't see why it couldn't be something where, talk about, how to build certain, concepts for characters or items, especially because I understand there's some of you guys who want to play tech that sometimes invention may not come easily to you. And I don't see why this couldn't be something that we explore as Wireheads.
We could do like a primer. We could do a primer for like one of our episodes on like doing certain build, like, because it depends on what you mean building what. Because how to build X could be a lot of things. It could be how to build an adventure, how to build a campaign
concept.
Yeah, how to build a character or type of character. Because like the first thing I thought of when I saw how to build X is how to build David Martinez in Cyberpunk Red, and it's like I don't like the tech that he uses is very different. So like, that's very prohibitive to like doing something like that well, versus how do I build a tech invention that is rules compliant at most tables? That's much easier to talk about because we can talk about what already exists.
I think that might be where we springboard off of, and I'll get back in contact with the viewer, because I think it's very much more like they are new to tech and they want to know where the lines are drawn with like the many different categories out there, because it's just like weapons, gear, armor, cyberware. They all have, there's so many different things out there that they just kind of want to know like where to do what. And I think that might actually be a great topic.
Yeah, I will caveat that a little bit. There is a certain extent to which our hands are kind of tied by the homebrew policy, which this podcast is subject to, that we may not be able to go as in depth about some of that, but we can talk about some general concepts for sure. And kind of start there, and we can maybe talk about certain other things. But yeah, we could pursue maybe having a couple of how to do whatever topics in the future, for sure. Because that, I know I've done videos on how to like write a gig, and how like, we build a gig one episode, like we talk about the concept. The second we actually go through and beat chart it. And then the third I actually ran it and showed how I improvised over what I wrote. So like GMs all have across the board like an idea of like what that's like. So if that's the kind of thing we're talking about, absolutely we can do that. I've done that content before. Diamond's done that kind of content before. Like that's definitely something we can do.
All right. And then we got LCC. How would you convince a player coming from a safer game that challenge and struggle is fun, and that optimizing and trying to avoid risks and struggle will negatively impact their fun? Oh, okay. This one hits a little close to home for me today. Is it okay if maybe we back burner this one and I take some time to cook on this one for next week?
We could. I can give at least my take on it.
Or I can give it, early discussion on it after you, Emmerron.
Yeah, if we want to give again Reader's Digest version, and then if we want to cook on it a little more for a full topic, I'd definitely be down to talk about this, because I think this does angle a little off of what we talked about today. So
absolutely,
without retreading a ton of what we talked about in our first segment today, I would say my number one thing is think about the fact that you are making a real person first and foremost. No one in reality, except for maybe elite military operators, are optimized at combat. And if that is the kind of character you're trying to make, by all means. But if you're trying to make a character who crawled out of the combat zone and is they patched up their gang chumbas in the middle of a conflict with the NCPD, and that's part of the reason that they are where they are today, there's only a certain level of optimization you can do and still have that character be believable, because you're really not making a character to be David Martinez or V. You're making a character to tell a story through. And the number one thing I remind my players of is, if your character dies, it's not like you are done playing. You just get to determine how that chapter closes and how your next chapter opens. That's what that means at that moment. And that is just as important, if not more important, than choosing how you make the character in the first place.
So I think also, coming from the other point of trying to optimize and avoiding risks, there is, and I'm going to be looking at this from the side of numbers and mechanics, because while I do enjoy writing stories, something I seem to really do well with is understanding the numbers in a game. I understand in Cyberpunk Red, and we had something come up actually for me here recently, where a player had to walk away from my table because they did not enjoy the fact that the street has punched back. The street punched back really hard. The struggle is rough, and sometimes, no matter how much you prepare, how much money you throw at something, sometimes it just really ruins your enjoyment of the game, because you set a level of expectation that sometimes will not be met, because the direction of the story is going a different way, or there's just no way that you and big number could fix the issue. Oh, I hear typing.
Yeah, sorry, I just had a follower. Thank you for the follow, Dark Knight. I appreciate it. Yeah.
And part of this is this, and I've seen this with players that come over from Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, where you are in those games to play as the hero. You are to be, the unstoppable force against the immovable object. You are, meant to become a very powerful warrior or mage or divine caster of that variety.
Well, and D&D is also,
But
I will add this
it's
as
a war
well.
game.
D&D is, yeah, it is based in a war game. It is a combat heavy system. Cyberpunk
Yep.
has a combat system. It is not the only way to play the game.
Yep. Which that will segue into the next topic, of course.
It will, but yeah, that's why I
came
want to
from
make
Victoria.
mention of that. I do want to say that is Cyberpunk and D&D have that indifference with each other.
I actually had I actually had to think on this one a little bit, and there will be more to discuss, and I don't know if I'll discuss it in a personal video or where I want to cover this. But the game of numbers ruins Cyberpunk.
Yep.
When you look at Cyberpunk, when you look at your character as nothing more than a stat block, it's skill numbers. I understand for some players, their logic is you need to become powerful so the city can't punch you down. I understand there is that mindset, but do understand that when you start punching everyone else down, the city will always find a way to punch back harder. It will.
The city will punch you
GM
down
has
no matter
chance to do it.
no matter who you are, how prepared you feel. You will get punched down. It'll happen. Your knees will get taken from you. It's fine.
So, and sometimes you will encounter things that are so far out of your control, they still impact you in ways, but there's no way you could have impacted it.
100%.
And a perfect example is you're going to find bodies of people you were trying to find. It's too late for them. But hey, at least you found the body. Sometimes there's betrayals. That really nice guy that offered you $10,000 up front to go take care of a little problem for him and not to tell anyone about it. Well, you can't tell anyone about it if the ceiling fell down on you.
So sad. The hit guy that I sent after you didn't notice him, and beep, goodbye. You just lost your whole building and everyone underneath the rubble. Yeah, it's the way of it.
Optimization, to a certain degree, can be fun. For me, I enjoy, playing around with some different. And I think Emmerron, same thing. Like when we're finding cyberdeck ideas. I mean, one night Emmerron and we cooked up like a 22 slot possibility.
Yeah.
Like
for a cyberdeck.
Sure, that could be great and all, but where's the challenge? If you're loaded with all that shit, where is the challenge?
Part of the challenge is getting to that point, because it's not at character creation even close. So part of the fun of optimizing, and this is something that I'll admit to easily, is you will look at numbers sometimes, and it is fun because that's the fun of the game, is making the numbers get bigger, right? Big numby go bigger is why we all love TTRPGs to some extent. And thankfully, I feel like Red's design is such that it is much harder to optimize the fun out of it. But in that same vein, and Jay Gray has said this before, if you are going into Cyberpunk with the idea that you are going to open a successful business and be constantly, cleaning up every gonk you find and taking their polymer one shots and then expecting those to resell for the full value of the item listed on the page, you're playing by a very different set of rules at that point. That's not what you're going to get for it. Not even close. You're not going to make, if you're a tech, right? And you spend 3 months making a new Icona car or whatever, you're not going to be able to sell that for 20 grand each time. It's going to be sold at a much lower price. So yeah, that's the thing to keep in mind, is there are kind of two tiers of rules to the game. And if you're looking to play Cyberpunk where you're risking stuff, if you took some of those things you try to do at just face value and were this is how it works, it's no. Because then there wouldn't be any game left. It would just be Yes, the tech just makes a car every 2 months, pays for their rent each month, and they live happily ever after. And there's no fun in that. Like, it's not Cyberpunk anymore. It's tech simulator.
And also, of course, solos that enjoy this kind of play style, I'm sorry, you are going under the bus for this one.
Oh no.
Because I see this come up again and again and again and again and again. If I had $1 for every time that I had seen that, I could pay for a session at Emmerron's table. Which, by the way, go check out Emmerron and start playing.
That you saw what exactly?
Linear frame martial arts.
Yep. Because it's probably one of the most powerful character generation builds.
And they're really good at martial arts. They can martial arts the fuck out of anything in their way. But as soon as they can't martial arts it, I've noticed a few of these guys flounder. They struggle when it is a tech issue, a social issue, a ranged issue, a perception issue, an education issue. They flounder.
Yep.
And you are making a person. Again, you're making a person. You are not making a drone.
That said,
this person will have to connect with people, and
that
it's okay
said,
if maybe they're not good at it.
Well, and there are ways to build these characters to be believable, but understand that the type of person you're making, if you suddenly are in a social campaign and like you've built this killer, you're going to be useless until the killing starts. And unless you're the one to go out and instigate that killing, which is a whole different kind of problem, then you're not going to have much of a role in a lot of those discussions. Where if you build like a more balanced character, like typically when I play a Netrunner, for example, I build them fairly balanced, where I'm like, okay, they've got some soft skills in terms of like being able to break through more conventional electronics. I can obviously hack. They've got a little handgun skill because I need them to know how to use small arms. They've got a little bit of education in terms of like perception and library search and all these things that like let them gather environmental information. And that character can do a lot with just that skill set. And I won't have that same problem, right? So yeah, that I think that's like the easiest way to kind of talk about that for now. We can maybe pull back to this. Either Diamond, you can do it in like a video of your own, or we can come back around to like maybe something about character archetypes that we like character archetypes that we love and hate, you know?
So one side's the ones that we love, and one side's the ones that we hate, and the Q&A. But yeah, at the end of the day, when they're coming from safer games to a game like Cyberpunk, you just need to be upfront with them that, hey, this is going to be a lethal game. Trust me, you will have fun. Trust the process. And don't feel you have to be powerful, John Cyberpunk in order to make it happen.
You don't need to be Himothy 24/7. You can be, the average street gonk for certain scenes, and that's okay. Part of TTRPGs as a whole, I should say, is in how we cooperate with our teammates to accomplish things. We don't have to be good at everything just ourselves. So.
And finally, from Thorium Dragon, I am in a CPR campaign set in 2076. My particular group has a healthy fear of the world, and we go out of our way to avoid unnecessary combat or conflict. Good for you. That's great, actually. Have either of you run games with this sensibility, and if so, how do you like them? I've actually got a group that prefers to function this way. Like, they will get down to business if they need to hand it to somebody, if they need to dish it out, give someone's ass on a platter, they'll do it. However, if they don't have to, and they can collect their eddies without having to fire a single bullet, they profit, baby.
Yeah, I would say I've encountered it less often in my groups, but I think it's not that my groups, like, I will say Neon Inferno Season 1, they sought conflict. They're very hammer, and the enemy is the nail kind of thing. But season 2 has been much more, let's think about the problem rationally and like let's find the best route. And sometimes it is force, sometimes it is being able to negotiate your way through, and not every problem is solved with a gun, you know, like that is the one thing. Like I think I typically am part of groups more often that are they're more focused on like, let's solve the problem as opposed to let's kill everything. You know, like they don't go looking for trouble, but the trouble will inevitably find them, even if they do talk their way out of most problems.
And Thorium even mentioned here, just to be clear, combat and conflict certainly come to our door despite our best efforts at times. And that will always happen.
That will always happen.
However, you're garnering a reputation in the city that you are more than happy to deal with things white gloves, but it seems that you've been able to handle it when somebody decides to provoke the peaceful group, or well, I wouldn't say peaceful group, but a well-mannered group that's very well composed.
Right. Yeah, and that I think is like the truest part of that is you're just like, it's never going to be easy. It's never simple, but like you will find that like this is another kind of element that ties back into that last question is like, if you build a character really good at doing social things, like I have a media in Neon Inferno 2 that is very involved with just being a mediator and like solving things socially. Those kinds of characters can be just as effective, if not more so, in certain contexts than their combat counterparts. Like mediators and faces are like extremely powerful in Cyberpunk because that's another way you can solve a ton of problems. Or you go the technical route and you're like, okay, I'm going to just override this. I'm going to override this side of the challenge with like electronic security tech check. And so like you can stealth around and just be a lockpick. And all of a sudden like, oh, we got to the objective. No one noticed us. Ta-da. We win. And like not a single shot was fired. That is also a potential thing that can happen. So it's just there's a lot of ways Cyberpunk can be played, and none of them are wrong.
Yeah. So I think on that note, again, if you have questions for Jay Gray, please send them to either me, to Emmerron, to wireheadspod@googlegroups.com. Or we might even need to do a questions for guest forum over in the Inferno and my Discord, so that way we can get all the questions.
Yep.
And of course, I'll put a Twitter announcement out there as well. You can feel free to reply to that post, and we will be more than happy to try to get your questions to Jay Gray.
To be clear,
whoever else.
To be clear, if we don't have time to ask your questions because we have a lot of things that we're curious about, our questions are going to get prioritized. I want there to be no doubt here. But if we have the time, because last time we didn't even get to all of our questions with Jay. So, but yeah, if we can answer any of your questions by asking them of Jay, or the spirit of them, if we see a lot of like one type of question, for example, we'll cluster those and run that out.
No, we are not going to get a release date. No, he's not going to talk about future products coming out. And yes, also, of course, you can, in fact, bet that he will not. Oh gosh, what was the other thing that he does?
Oh, he doesn't pick favorites. He never picks favorites. He doesn't have a favorite anything, and that's a philosophical take of his. So yeah, you don't ask him his favorite whatever. Don't ask him about things that aren't out yet, and don't ask him about things that haven't been announced on the subject of like the CEMK, because like he's probably not going to answer any of that. If we get any of that information on our interview with him, it'll be because we asked him something very open-ended, like, hey, are there any new little things you want to share about this upcoming product that you haven't released to the public yet? Like,
yeah, and Thorium, you did send another question here. We are about to wrap up the episode, so
put it on the list
we'll
for next
definitely
time.
put this down for next week. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, we are nothing if not good about getting to the questions. So like, if ever we are like, because we're like pretty much right up at time, we're a little over. But yeah, if you put in a question to us, we don't answer it 1 week, odds are it'll be near the top of the next week. But yeah, I think that should probably do it for us this week. Again, Jay Gray is going to be next Friday. So those of you who are hearing it on Spotify, this time you do have time to submit your questions. Last time we didn't give enough of a heads up, and that was kind of on us. This was our first time kind of doing it when we last interviewed Jay. So this time we know a little more. We're a little better prepared this time.
Well, we also didn't have a lot of time knowing that Jay was coming either.
To be fair, there were a couple reasons, but end of the day, we have learned a little more. We also didn't get to all our own questions last time, so even if we saw some more, probably we wouldn't have been able to ask them. But we want to ask as many questions as we can of him, and we can kind of move past some of the more like, can you tell us about your like how you got into Artelsaurian and stuff, because we already know those answers. So like, elements of what we want to know, especially if you have questions about information we already know about for the CEMK, you want answers to some of that or curious about elements of that, put those questions in. But do not expect him to give us a release date. We will probably not get one more specific than the one we already have until we are like knocking on the door of the release, similar to Interface Volume 3. Like, we will probably not know before maybe a day or two prior what the actual release date is. But with that said, I think that's going to do for us this week. So again, my name is Emmerron.
I'm Diamond Dust.
And we are the Wireheads podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. And I hope all of you have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Stay healthy, stay safe, and until we see you again, peace.